Episode 2 of the secret romantic guest house moves 8 years back in time when the royal guards had still been chasing Lee Sol. Back then, Lee Sol was a teenager and had come to meet eunuch Sung Gil. However, he learns that Sung Gil had betrayed him when he called the royal guards to capture and kill him immediately because he had been deposed. Just as the guards are about to kill Lee Sol, a man in a mask arrives just in time to save him. The man kills all the guards along with Chief Administrator Jang Taeha's son. Taeha is shocked to see his heir dead and tries to attack Lee Sol and the man in the mask. However, the man fights Taeha, leaving a scar on his cheek as Lee Sol manages to flee. Back in the present, the royal guards arrive at the Garden of Flowers guest house as Sung Gil takes a close look at all the scholars that were there. He claims that Lee Sol was not one of the 3 guests and the guards leave after verifying the scholar's identity. Wonho is infuriated with Sung Gil for not being of any help, but after the royal guards have left, Sung Gil looks back inside the guest house before leaving. Inside the guest house, Dano chases after the debtors who claim that they were from the courtesan house. Dano is shocked that her father had anything to do with the courtesans while Sheol gossips about Dano's father with Kang-san. Sheol claims that a loan of 100 silver coins is impossible for Dano to pay off without turning her own guest house into a courtesan house. The next morning at breakfast, Sheol makes things awkward when he asks why Dano was unmarried still despite having so many prospective grooms around. Naju awkwardly leaves without answering the question and the 4 scholars are left to eat the bland dumpling soup. At the same time, Dano is at the Byangak courtesan house where she meets courtesan Hwa Ryong who runs the place. They discuss the 100 silver coin debt Dano's father had left behind, and Ha Ryong claims that it was not the courtesan house that he was indebted to but actually Judge Jang Taeha. Dano is troubled and Ha Ryong suggests that giving up her family house will help her settle the debt for good. Dano refuses to do so and visits Judge Jang to discuss the debt. She asks for a written note to prove that her father really was indebted to the chief administrator. Judge Jang tells her that Dano's father had made a pact to marry Dano's older sister to Taeha's son once they were both of age in order to nullify the loan, but since they could not be married, the loan still remained. Taeha claims that since his son had died, Dano's sister was to live in his house as his son's widow but had lived in the Garden of Flowers till she passed away. Dano is in tears on her way back to the guest house, but Kang-sen manages to cheer her up after they bicker about how Dano looks ugly when crying. Yuha pays his stepbrother, young Gilju, a visit and asks him for a loan of 100 silver coins. Gilju mocks Yuha for being an illegitimate child of the Young family and refuses to help his brother with the money. Later that night, Estate Minister Kim Wan, a nobleman, is leaving the royal palace. He runs into the court lady who is bringing in Consort Park's mother for postnatal care. Kim Wan is confused when he hears the sound of a baby crying from inside the chariot that Consort Park's mother was in, as the child was supposed to be inside the palace. At the palace, eunuch Yoon tells King Lee Chang that the consort has delivered a healthy baby boy, which suddenly makes him recall the palmist's prediction. The next morning, Dano is left perplexed when she gets another marriage proposal from Sir Ong, who offers to pay off her debt in full if she agrees to marry him. Ong is the same man who Sheol had saved Dano from. Dano almost considers the proposal, but Naju asks her to stay hopeful and that together they will find a way to pay off the debt. During lunch, Sheol brings up the fact that Dano has received a marriage proposal, and the scholars grow curious. Dano avoids answering the question, but Kang-sen seems concerned. Later that day, Dano accompanies Yuha, Sheol, and Kang-sen to the market, and Sheol claims that the grumpy scholar, Kang-sen, seemed very happy around Dano. Kang-sen panics and goes in the other direction. Meanwhile, Dano ends up reselling her old accessories in an attempt to make some money. Ong finds Dano in the market and tries to force her to marry him. Yuha gets furious and twists Ong's hand, pushing him away from Dano. Ong questions Dano's character for being around so many men, which infuriate the noblewoman. She gives Ong an earful in the market and rejects his proposal, causing the other marketers to mock him. Back at the guest house, Dano is worried that her house will be taken away from her if she does not pay the debt. She pays the dining home a visit to discuss what the royal guards were looking for a few nights before. The lady from the dining house tells Dano that the royal guards were looking for a traitor. At the same time, King Lee is holding his newborn son in his arms. Kim Wan is also there but does not tell the king what he heard the night before. The king claims that now that he had an heir, it was more important for them to eliminate Lee Sol because he was a threat to the throne. Kim Wan learns that Consort Park was living away from the palace because she was gravely ill. That night, Ong brings a few men to the Garden of Flowers in order to threaten Dano. However, Kang-sen threatens them on their way to the guest house and warns Ong to stay away from Dano. The next morning, Dano gets a handwritten apology from Ong, who promises to stay away from Dano because of that man's threat. Dano wonders who the person that threatened Ong is and concludes that Kang-sen, with his artisan skills, is the one. She runs into him and questions him. Kang-sen is flustered and initially lies but ends up confessing that he had threatened Ong. Dano is curious why Kang-sen tried to protect her, but the scholar awkwardly leaves without answering. As Yuha is leaving to meet his family, Dano gives him a packed lunch along with the money he left at her door the previous day. She claims that she will manage to pay off the loan on her own and wants the scholar to focus on being a good guest to her like he always had been. At the family meeting, Yuha learns that the king finally has an heir after 10 years. The men discuss that the royal family was looking for Lee Sol in order to kill him. Yuha appears concerned by the information. At the same time, Kang-sen starts practicing his swordsman skills until he starts bleeding from his palms. Sheol is taking it easy as he gambles at the courtesan house. Ha-ryong tries to learn everything about Dano's guest house from Sheol, but his answers throw her off. He asks Ha-ryong to stop taking so much interest in the guest house. Ha-ryong then chats with Wonho, who promises to kill Lee Sol before he can meet King Lee. The next morning, Dano is waiting outside Kang-sen's room to cheer him on before his exam that day. She offers him a special meal she made all by herself to wish him luck, and Kang-sen is impressed. The civil exam starts first with a martial arts exam where Kang-sen boasts perfect swordsmanship as well as a perfect archery score. 3 courtesans come to Dano's guest house and demand to have rooms there for their accommodation. Naju is against having the trio there, but Dano claims that she will do her best to save the guest house, even if it meant having the trio boss around them to cause unnecessary trouble. State Minister Kim Kwan appears at the civil exams to observe the scholars. He is able to witness Kang-sen on the horse and is amazed to see him pass the test. The 3 courtesans have another reason to live at the guest house. Upon hearing the legend of the virgin ghost, the trio want to see the ghost that lives in the annex of the guest house. Sheol spots them going inside the annex and, instead of stopping them, follows the trio inside. Sheol tries to take them outside, but the noise from inside the annex startles them all. Together, the trio and Sheol run back to the guest house. Later that night, Dano pays a visit to Judge Jang while Kang-sen follows her inside the chief administrator's house. He sneaks outside the room where Dano tells Tiha that she is willing to look for Lee Sol in exchange for her debt being nullified.
Hey, top down on the 405. Half hour late, we on LA time.